I think mindset is the root of everything. It all starts in the mind, and we know that the mind and the body are linked, and we can actually achieve quite a lot if we believe we can. And I think that's where it all starts. I'm guilty of this. It happened to me as well. You're there and you're looking for people to learn from, people who've inspired you, and you look at what they're doing. And that's actually a really good place to start. I think if there's someone in your field or your sector that you really admire, have a look at how they're doing it. But before you even go to market, you have to look at your message. And before you can even go to your messaging, you have to look at your mindset. I think that if you don't put yourself out there, you've got other people who might control your narrative.
Welcome to the Business Sense podcast. I'm Garry Crosby. This is the podcast where we make sense of the business journey by talking to owners about what they've learned along the way. Let's jump into today's episode. Laurey, thanks for joining me today on the Business Sense podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I've been waiting a while to get on. I've been following your progress and the developments of the Business Sense podcast with great intrigue.
Yeah, good. And I'm really looking forward to the idea that we're going to share some stuff today that people are really going to find useful in their business as well as finding out a little bit about you. So let's start with that. Tell me about your journey to where you are now.
Oh, the journey. So we'll try and keep it brief. So I've always loved words and English, so I started my career as a journalist, actually. So up at the Newark Advertiser, so up the road from here. And I loved it. I was where I was really introduced to the art of storytelling and stayed there 3 years. And then after that, I became an English teacher. So that was also an adventure. And I think the students I taught me a lot more about myself than I probably taught them, I think, along the way.
Right.
And it was really rewarding. Not rewarding enough to keep me in the job. So I did leave and had a few other jobs in between. And then it just happened. I was made redundant and I didn't want to go back to teaching. I thought, right, I'm gonna be my own boss, and found my way into business.
And here we are, the entrepreneurial spark ignited, and you've been in business for a while. Mindset and messaging, right?
Indeed, yes. Mindset and messaging.
Yeah. So just give us an idea about what that company does, what you do for your clients.
Right. So Mindset and Messaging, I am a messaging strategist and copywriter, and I help my clients, who are mainly coaches and creatives, embrace creativity, create content with confidence, and use the power of persuasion to attract their ideal client.
Wow.
And there's something that I've really been passionate about, I think, this last year, particularly as a copywriter. I've been doing that for about 4 years. And I would have clients who would come to me and say, oh, I need this. Can you do this? Yes, I can. Why do you need it? And they'd go, I don't know. So there wasn't really the understanding of what they needed to say and why they needed to say it. And I think that's where the power of persuasion for me came in.
And when I'm coaching my clients, mindset comes up a lot, and identity comes up a lot, and what they think about themselves and what they think other people think about them and things like that. Just thinking about mindset from your perspective, why is it so important when you're starting off in business?
I think mindset is the root of everything. If you look at any professional athlete, any person, any student as well, obviously going back to my teaching days, it all starts in the mind, and we know that the mind and the body are linked, and we can actually achieve quite a lot if we believe we can. And I think that's where it all starts. I think the reason I went down the route of mindset and messaging is I wanted to show my clients that they could create. They are the best people to create content for their business, and they can write, more importantly. I think a lot of people believe that they can't write, or they always need to go to a copywriter to get something done. Whereas your voice, your message is in there, and you have it. And whether or not you've got limiting beliefs, which I'm sure you deal with a lot with your clients, and that's probably preventing them or stopping them. But yes, it's that idea of you can, trust me, you can. Everybody can write. It's just that belief first.
And do you think that people come to the marketplace and they've started their business, the coaches and creatives that you're aiming to provide the service for, and one of the things that really floors them is the comparison with others, and they see all of this amazing marketing going on, and that must impact on their belief.
Oh, shiny objects, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, I think, and I'm guilty of this. It happened to me as well. You're there and you're looking for people to learn from, people who've inspired you, and you look at what they're doing. And that's actually a really good place to start. I think if there's someone in your field or your sector that you really admire, have a look at how they're doing it. But when you start comparing yourself and comparing your results and start then criticizing yourself because you're not achieving things like they are, then that's when the danger creeps in. So take a step back and look at how far you've come.
Yeah. I like Jordan Peterson. I don't think his book is here, but he talks about, I think rule number 4 in his 12 rules for life is compare yourself with how you were yesterday, not with how others are today.
I like that. And I think as well, I'm seeing a lot of quotes at the moment on social media that say you are living the dream that you had like 5 years ago or part of it. So remember that.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about people who come to you at the beginning and you say they might have some self-limiting beliefs, which I completely understand that. So your job at that point to make them believe in themselves, how do you go about that?
Oh, I'm an eternal optimist, Garry, and don't know whether it shows. I'm wearing yellow today. Really optimistic, and I believe in positivity. There's positive in everything, and it's also trying to help that rub off onto someone else and see the best in them and help them realize sometimes it's just phrasing something completely different. In fact, there was a lady I met at networking in London 2 weeks ago, and she was really doing very well. But she even said out loud, she's like, oh, I sometimes feel bad. I don't feel I should probably talk about my success and that I shouldn't have it.
Right.
So I asked her to say, all right then, but why not look at or tell me why you don't deserve the success? And she couldn't. So just even that sort of flipping it around and having a look at it that way, she couldn't say why she didn't deserve success. And hopefully she's gone away looking at it really differently.
Yeah, a quick flip. And I imagine that your clients, their mindset develops over time, so they might come to you with that sort of slight fragility about or uncertainty about what to do in the marketing space. How does their mindset change over the time with you?
I think it's more about confidence and realization that they already have the answers. And predominantly it's looking at content, looking at what they should be writing, what they should be saying, how they should be communicating, what their message is.
Yeah.
And when they start to dig a little deeper into that and then you start showing that you can write, you can tell stories. I've had so many clients who go to me, I haven't got any stories to tell, I've got nothing to share. And then by the end of sort of a session, they go, I've got so many stories to share. I've got so much to give.
Yeah.
And that's really rewarding for me. But it's just helping them realize it. I'm not teaching them. I might teach them, the structure of a story, but I'm not giving them the stories. I don't know their life. And then they suddenly realize that they've got a lot of value to share. So coming away knowing that they feel more confident is fantastic.
And if you're drawing it out of them and they don't really realize it, you're coaching in a way, aren't you?
Yes. Yeah. I always played with, am I a creativity coach? Am I a content coach? But I am a copywriter and a messaging strategist, and I love writing. So I like to work with clients and write with them. It's a done with service. It should never be a done for, in my opinion, when it comes to copywriting. So yes, if you're looking for a copywriter, if you're just going to outsource, I think that can be quite dangerous if you haven't given the right brief, the right, your values, your message, what it is you're trying to achieve. That really comes from you, your passions, your why. We all know about Simon Sinek's Start With Why. If you haven't got that and your copywriter doesn't know that, then that might not come through your content and it won't create an authentic message that your audience can relate to, which is really powerful these days. It's what I think most people want, connection.
And authenticity has been a bit of a theme over the last couple of years, I think. And I'm wondering whether or not we can define what that is. Done with and not for, as you just said there, is this idea that you're working with your clients. How do they become authentic?
I think you become authentic, and I think authenticity has become a word that's been bandied around quite a lot. So we are becoming at risk of being desensitized to it, but it is extremely important, I think, in business and in life. To be authentic, I think you know what your values are, your beliefs are, and you stick to them and you're true to them, and you don't change them regardless of opportunities or challenges that come your way, and you live your message. You are what you say, you do what you teach.
Yeah.
I think that is a level of authenticity that I think you can portray in your messaging, in your content.
And do people need a little bit of guidance and assistance to find those values and find those beliefs? Sometimes it's a hard question to ask, isn't it?
I think they just sometimes need a bit of, not permission to go and have a look at them. I think that's very coachy speak, isn't it? I think that when they just sit down and are given a space to actually focus on those values and beliefs, they find them quite quickly. They know what they are. They just probably don't either pay attention to them regularly or have them written down. I've got mine written down.
Yeah, me too. So authenticity then in the terms of telling a story. How do you draw that out of your clients? Because they've all got stories, as you say, but you want them to be
Yes.
genuine and authentic.
Well, obviously, have those stories really happened, I think, is the first place to start. I think that's,
True
ideal.
stories.
It's a true story. I think there can be a true story with a little bit of editing in there. I still think that's authentic. I think that when you're telling a story, I always work with my clients to look at their values, their beliefs, what they want their personal brand or their business brand to be viewed as or described as by other people.
Yep.
So one of mine is positivity and clarity. So when I'm telling a story, quite often my stories will go back to those values. So it'll be a positive story. It will be a story about, empowering people to believe in themselves with confidence. It'll be something like that. And that's when you're living authentically and telling authentic stories, because they relate back to your values, your beliefs, which ultimately is your message. I think people think a message is a strap line or something on a website, and it isn't. It's everything you do and say and write. So starting with your values and beliefs is a really good way to look at what your message is.
And so when we go into the marketing environment and we see people, putting out their marketing content, they're trying to be authentic. In terms of your guidance and helping them to tell the story, where do you start with that?
Marketing obviously drives a lot of what we do as business owners, we have to do it. I think a lot of people don't like marketing. I know that's probably a blanket statement, but they face it with a little bit of apprehension because I think they see sales and marketing go together. And I know I don't like the word sales. I don't like to feel like I'm selling. I have this idea that it potentially is a little bit pushy. So when you have marketing, I think people associate the two words together, sales and marketing. But before you even go to market, you have to look at your message. And before you can even go to your messaging, you have to look at your mindset. So I do cover the two elements really before you start looking at sort of sales funnels or looking at ways of driving traffic to your website. So starting with your mindset, then going into your messaging is a really, really good starting point. But in terms of the stories that we craft, a lot of that content ends up on social media. I think that's a primary platform for many businesses to use. I think that if you're not using social media, it's a slight detriment. You don't have to use all of them. Just pick the one where your audience is, your ideal client will be. And it's about sharing more than just what you do. It's reasons why you do it, your journey to getting there, stories that you can tell are client stories as well. I think that's always really powerful. There's power in a testimonial, but there's even more power in a client story. So you have to look at creating or crafting a way that really puts your reader into your client's shoes. And that's where the art of storytelling would come in more.
So it is an art, storytelling. I know you've got a few frameworks that you use to help people to get to that.
It's a skill, but it's a skill that anybody can learn. There is a basic 4-part framework, and you could go really deep. You could look at the different types of stories that you tell. You could look at the history of storytelling. There are apparently 7 basic plots that you could go and sort of put any film into. And I think that although we're not going to create those sorts of stories in our messaging and our content, there are lots of other structures that you could have. But at its most basic form, if you'd like me to share the storytelling structure, you would have a character. So that might be you, it might be your client, it might be somebody that you know. You can set the scene if you want to, so that your audience can start to feel themselves there. Now, that character therefore needs a goal. So what is that goal? What was the challenge or the obstacle that was preventing them from achieving that goal? And then what was the resolution? So what happened in the end? So you can have the character, goal, and challenge in any order that you like, as long as the resolution comes last.
Right.
And that is essentially the basic framework of a good story. We as humans love to know the ending of a story. What was that resolution? You'll keep people hanging on. And ultimately, we will put ourselves in the character's shoes. So if we start to feel an emotion, understand how they overcame that, then we will remember that feeling. And if it's a good feeling, and we can attribute that feeling to the brand or the business that created that story, then we will be interested in maybe finding a little bit more about them.
That is fascinating because, of course, a lot of the social media stuff is, here's what I've done, or here's my stuff. Please pleased by it. So the power of the story there is taking the viewer, if you like, on a bit of a journey.
Oh, it's persuasion. So the power of persuasion is really, really powerful. I said to you earlier, I feel uncomfortable with the word sales, so I don't use the word sales. I use the word persuasion instead. So it's called persuasion marketing. And there is another basic framework for persuasion, which I actually was introduced to when I was an English teacher. And it's the art of rhetoric, which is Aristotle. So you have pathos, ethos, and logos. And pathos is about emotions and feelings. So it's something that we need to bring to our content. We need to help our audience feel something, whether that's understanding their pain points or their goals or their objections, their desires. It's about telling stories that will show somebody who's overcome something. So you feel that real sense of awe or whatever feeling, it doesn't matter. Even if it's a negative feeling. You then have ethos, which is about credibility. So this is why, and this is probably the biggest thing I say to my clients, is you have to put yourself in your content. A lot of people feel very reluctant to put photos or videos out there. But we as humans need to see who we're working with, who we're buying from, and actually sharing your voice like you do on the podcast, sharing your image, sharing videos. People can see your mannerisms. That's what we trust. We trust humans, and we don't actually buy a service or buy a product. We buy into the person who's selling those things. So if you don't have yourself in your content and create that ethos, which then goes back to your values and your beliefs and your messaging. And then the final one is logos, which is all about logic, which I find a lot of brands tend to focus on. But we're not logic-driven beings. We're emotional beings at our core.
We are.
And we can provide facts and statistics and reasons why you should buy and appeal to the logical brain. We can create educational content about, who, what, when, where, why. That's always a good start to create logic-driven questions. But unless we have the emotion and the pathos and the ethos behind that, that isn't really what converts. So you need it, but you do need to have the other two as well. So that in itself is the art of persuasion. And that is what I help my clients put into their content.
And I want to pick something out of that piece of advice that you just gave there about putting yourself in your content. For some people, that might be difficult. How do you help people to overcome that natural reluctance to be seen on camera, on social media, on out there?
I think that if you don't, and I explain this to my clients, if you don't put yourself out there, you've got other people who might control your narrative.
Right.
And so that takes away your power. So actually what you're doing is you need to empower yourself. And sometimes that's the driver you need or they need to go, right, I need to put my face out there, or just, I need to overcome it. I just need to do it. Feel the fear and do it anyway is, it's a great book, by the way.
It is.
And
Susan Jeffers.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think when you realize that there is only you to put yourself out there, you can't rely on anyone else. They just go and do it. And then they realize actually the thought was worse than the actual action.
Yeah.
And we've only got one face. So I've only got one. I've got to use this. This is it. This is my voice. This is my face.
And I think that's it's part of authenticity, to be out there and to show who you are, and the occasional vulnerabilities and things like that. So when it comes to the practical help, you said working with, not done. Sorry, done with, not done for.
Yes,
that's right. What does that mean in terms of your client's journey?
Oh, so there's lots of different ways that I work with clients. So I can teach them how. So especially if you've got a team, I know that a lot of coaches are expanding and they've got small teams now. Same with creatives. So if you've got someone in your team who could control your content, could create your content, but isn't a copywriter or isn't a marketer. I mean, we are all marketers, I think, if we own and run businesses. Then it's taking them through step by step of the art of storytelling, looking at the art of rhetoric as well, and how you can incorporate that to create content consistently. You'll always have something to say, and then they can do it in-house so that they haven't got to go to copywriters or outsource to marketing agencies necessarily.
Yeah.
And then the other option is a messaging strategy session. I love doing these because it really gets to the heart and soul of a business. So I am passionate about personality-driven content. Again, it shows the ethos of a business, of a person. And from that strategy session, I can then write a lovely report, not just a report, a lovely report that they can then take to perhaps external copywriters or marketing agencies, but it has everything about them in it.
Mm.
Or if we really get on, then I can do it with them.
Yeah.
Because you've got to like who you're working with. And I think that was one of the first things I learned in business. I said yes to everything when I first started nearly 4 years ago.
Mm.
And that's really hard, because if you don't connect with or relate to who you're working with, you then don't do as great a job. And then that impacts on you.
Mm.
So yes, it's one of my first rules that, yes, I work with coaches and creators, but when I really work with the people that I like.
Yeah.
And same for them, they have to like me.
Yeah, of course. And I like the concept of personality-driven marketing. Let's just explore that for a second. You've talked about storytelling, you've talked about authenticity and things like that. How do we coach, how do we teach people to put their personality into the marketing?
So I think with written content, this is where it becomes, I say, more of a challenge, because we know that someone will probably pick me up on this statistic. It's around 7% of our communication actually comes through words. Mm-hmm. Everything else is nonverbal. It's how we act. It's our body language. It's our tone of voice. So how do we then get that into written content? So that's where the challenge is, because you've only got 7%. So I always tell my clients to write like you speak. So if you have an accent, you can't put that through your content. But if you have a dialect, use the words that you would use. Don't try and use jargon or what you deem to be professional speak or industry speak. Be yourself. It's going back to that authentic element. So if you use a particular word as part of your dialect, I'd say I'm Northern, I'm Midlands, I'm from Nottinghamshire originally, but I'll use things that are probably typically Northern. And I think that there's a charm in that when you can write as you speak. If you have a sociolect as well. So a sociolect would be what you'd use with your peers.
Right.
So obviously now Gen Zs have a definite sociolect that they would use. But if they were writing, I would encourage them to write like you speak. If you use that slang or that terminology and you know that that's what your audience relates to, put that in there as well. Don't try and be anything else but you. Again, be authentic. So you can get that in there. You can get the pace of how you talk. I talk quite quickly a lot, so I do like long sentences. They do say as a copywriter, have short sentences. SEO likes short sentences. But write like you speak.
And what about, so if we think like the purpose of marketing is to grab people's attention. So sometimes I see people trying to be a little bit edgy or being a little bit attention grabbing. What would you say about that? Is that a tactic worth considering, even if it's not quite you?
I think you have to do what you feel comfortable with, because if you try and be anything other than you, then that shows. And I think authenticity will always help your business, but inauthenticity will kill it.
Right.
So if you feel it's fake or forcing it, I think that we can, the public are not stupid. So they're more familiar with these tactics now. And I feel that they crave connection. We all crave connection. I think COVID had a huge part to play in that after being locked away for 2 years, we now crave more of that interaction, that human connection. And I think we now look for that in brands. So that is why personality-driven content, done with, not done for. It's a team element. We're in this together. And I think that has continued since COVID. And I think a lot of brands are taking that on board.
So you've got to grab attention somehow.
Yes.
And I'm wondering whether or not there's any place in that marketing mix for a slight air of vulnerability. Does that belong anywhere?
Yes, I think you can be vulnerable if you've got a lesson learned that you want to share, or a mistake that you made, or I think vulnerability can be good if, again, used wisely or used sparingly. As a business, you also don't want to be completely vulnerable and say things that you did wrong yesterday, if you've got then a client meeting coming up tomorrow. But things that you might have learned from in the past that might be a year old, 6 months old, and that you can now look back on from a place of learning. I think that sort of vulnerability always goes a long way. But I'd have to see it.
Yeah. And let's just talk about marketing generally. I mean, you've been in the space now for 4 years, you said. What kind of trends are you noticing now as we come towards the end of 2023?
It's that relatability. I think that 2023 is about relatability and showing that you can connect with your audience. I think that's been quite a trend. I think that has been happening, before this year, but yes, relatable content is what's needed. So again, if we look at persuasion and the art of rhetoric, that's the ethos element. So, Share what you've learned, share who you are, share why you do what you do. Share a little bit about who you are behind the scenes as well, not just in business. I think we like to know more about the person. I think this goes down to like the celebrity factor. If ever you see a celebrity in a magazine, you know, as much as I was the media, I do hate this as well, but they're snapped in their joggers and they're picking up a pint of milk or they're taking their kids to school. We're obsessed with it because we like to see that they're human and that they're like us. And I even used to get this as a teacher. If you were walking around the supermarket and a student would see you, they wouldn't necessarily say anything, but say you saw them on the Monday morning in your English lesson, you'd look at them and they'd look at you and you'd be like, yeah, I saw you in Sainsbury's. And it's almost that connection that you can have, and that can build bridges. It can really form relationships. So sharing what you like and what makes you you, you can create a connection on a different level. So I know, so I'm a military wife. I recently got married last year, and I know that you're former forces as well. So we already have that connection, and we built upon that when we met each other, and that was the spark, and then everything else builds on that. So if we'd not revealed that, we probably would have been talking about, I don't know, marketing or something along those lines instead. But having that real human connection that we share, just it makes you almost, I was like, oh, I understand you.
And there's something about the platforms, isn't there? Because when you think about LinkedIn, if I go back even just a couple of years, you would often see on LinkedIn, you know, angry commenters would be like, "This is not Facebook. It's not Facebook." So, you know, LinkedIn has created itself as a professional network where people do professional things and they put professional content out there. How can you be human on LinkedIn?
You know what? I'm finding LinkedIn a little, I say strange. It's brilliant. I love LinkedIn. But the content that I put on LinkedIn, if it's educational, so I obviously do what I say, and I have my educational content, and I put that on Instagram, and it does well on Instagram. People want the added value, they want to learn. You put that on LinkedIn, no, people don't really want to know. But you put something celebratory on there, or a lesson that you've learned, and so more of the ethos element and behind the scenes, and people really love that. So I think that's the content that always does well. So yes, it isn't Facebook, but I do think there's a way of sharing content that will always have almost a business message to it. I think one post I did was I went to Hokum Beach, and it was my time just to almost unplug and switch off. So it wasn't a business post, but it kind of was. And actually people really related to that. So finding things that your audience will relate to, even if it's not officially strictly business. And as long as you're not posting a family event every day, then it's all about balance, isn't it? As with most things in life.
My most successful ever LinkedIn post was a picture of my dog.
Oh, put your pets on there and you'll win. But if you started doing that every day, you could guarantee people would be like, right, okay, Garry.
Well, he died.
You know you love your dog.
He died a couple of weeks previously. And I put a little post out, this is a couple of years ago, and I put a post out saying that I didn't realise how much of a presence he'd been in my life, and there was now this gap. And it just went bonkers. It went viral globally with people commenting 54,000 comments or something. It was just absolutely outrageous. But
that's amazing.
There we go, LinkedIn.
But it is. I think that if you look at the authenticity piece, it was lifting the curtain on your business, but it was showing you as Garry, the human who had a dog, rather than Garry, the business coach. Actually, it just made people go, oh, I've got a dog. I would feel the same. And so they really empathize with you. So the feelings that you would have stirred with that, going to pathos, were there. Not that was the intent necessarily, but very powerful. But dogs and kids, sorted.
So let's talk about the technology as well, because obviously the technology is changing a lot. And you said that you'd spent some time as a copywriter. You know, for the last 12 months, I've been hearing that copywriting is dead because there's now a machine that will do that for you.
There is.
What are you seeing in terms of those technology trends?
I think that they're empowering. I think whether or not you're surprised to hear a copywriter say that, but there are some people who can't afford to, or it's not within their budget to go and get a copywriter to create their content. So ChatGPT, and there are many other forms of AI out there, is really supporting and helping those business owners create content. Obviously, it comes with a warning. The warning is don't just copy and paste what ChatGPT puts out there, because you don't know how many other people have had access to that similar content. You know, it might not be bespoke to you each time. And you can also spot ChatGPT content a mile off now, especially it'll chuck out a load of emojis and quite a lot of the thing. And people are listing those and you just think, So if people know that it's AI, I think people will lose trust. So I think, the ethos element, you might lose a little bit of credibility. But absolutely, use it for inspiration, use it for ideas, use it for content idea generation. Take it, build on it, add your voice, add your authenticity. So I do think it's really powerful. And it will just make us do things quicker. Like, we evolve, we progress with everything in life. And how many times have you been to a library recently? We all get ebooks and audiobooks. Yet libraries are still going because people do still enjoy to go. And how many times have you shopped on Amazon this week rather than going on the high street? It's just part of that evolution, I think. So I don't think copywriters are going to lose out. I am a copywriter. I know that. I'm a messaging strategist as well. So I like to think there's two strings to my bow. But in terms of the actual copywriting, it is an art, it is a skill, but it also can be learned. And I'm teaching my clients to do that. And if they can get some inspiration from AI, then yeah, it is. It's just part of the evolution. And it just means we will create more in the time that we've got rather than necessarily losing jobs.
But that's quite an interesting balance equation, isn't it? Because you could say to somebody, as I've done with some of my clients, it's a great thing for outlines and frameworks and ideas, but what you can do is create content with it and instantly become inauthentic.
Yes.
So you become consistent and productive, and you've got lots and lots of things to say and do because this machine has produced it for you. But out there in the marketing world, you're now viewed instantly as inauthentic.
And I think this is why I've now sort of really said I create personality-driven content, because ChatGPT and AI will never know the heart and soul of a business, your drives, your stories, your passions, your reasons why. So you can get I talk about logos, I talk about logic, probably ChatGPT can spit a lot of that out for you. But when it comes to creating emotion and helping your readers or other clients feel emotion, then I don't think AI will ever be able to replace that. It will never be able to replace the human element of branding, which is you. So
yeah, indeed. And let's imagine that you've got your message, your mindset right. First of all, you've got your messaging strategy right. You're beginning to produce lots of content. There's lots of other technology there to help you schedule stuff and things like that. Do you work with that? Do you advise your clients on how to use those kind of things?
Yes, I do. I work with clients. So when I create the done with content, I will then go and schedule it for them. Then my idea is that they have helped me create it, so it's authentically them. It's their words. We talk for 90 minutes. To sort of create this content, and then I go away and do it. But I'll schedule it for them so that they can forget about it in a sense and just focus on their business. They know that marketing and sort of social media will help drive and create a presence for them. But it's that idea that, yes, it's scheduled, it can be forgotten for now, they can do other bits in between. So scheduling tools are great. I do still think, again, though, that there's great credit in showing up live, shall we say. So you post and, there are so many algorithms, which, I don't know all of the algorithms, because I don't know any of the algorithms. They change them all the time.
They keep them fairly close to their chest, don't they?
They do. Yeah. And I believe that my last sort of understanding that LinkedIn has like the golden 2 hours. So when you post and people are interacting, in that first 2 hours, that first window, then that's when you should be replying. You should be, engaging with the comments that are given. So showing up live will always be the first option and that you should take if you can do it yourself. But not everyone has that luxury. And actually you have a business to run. So what tools can we use? The scheduling tools, I think you'll find them everywhere. Obviously LinkedIn now has its own on its platform, which is great. So use that. So hopefully that's great for content as well. And show up where you can, but if not, schedule.
And I guess there must be a balance in there somewhere, because there'll be the right amount of times to appear in people's feeds, and then there'll be an amount that's just too much, and people are like, I'm fed up of that, or I don't want to see that again, or this is a message that I'm getting too often. How do you advise your clients to find the balance? Be there, be seen, but don't overwhelm people.
Yes, the thing is, you hear different things from different sources. So I think, again, it's finding what's manageable for you, what you can do consistently. I think, I've read, you should post twice a day. And then sometimes you should repost that same post. And you just think, that's a bit much. I think anywhere between 3 or 4 times a week on LinkedIn works quite nicely. You can maybe schedule posts, particularly if they're logic driven and they're talking about what you do and answering questions. You can have those scheduled in advance. But things that might have happened yesterday that you want to talk about that are poignant. So, can you guess what I'm going to be posting about later? I'm sure it'll be something to do with a podcast. But that's because it's happened now. If I posted that in 2 weeks, it would kind of lose its resonance maybe. So I think that, yes, choose what you can do if you're going to be doing it live, and then maintain that, or choose how many you want to schedule and maybe try and do one live in between. And when I say live, I mean post it directly, like there and then, and be around to respond to any comments. I mean, and that's just LinkedIn. I think with things like Instagram, which people might explore, and Facebook, again, I think having a similar approach. But I think what I like to tell my clients is it's down to them. It's all such a personal decision. And if you're waiting for somebody to tell you what you should post and when you should post it, you kind of lose control of your business. And isn't the whole thing that actually it's your business and you started it for a reason? So connect with your clients in the way that you feel comfortable. So if showing up 5 times a week doesn't feel right, it's not authentic. Don't do it. Yeah. If showing up twice is better, do that.
Good advice.
And it might be then it's just a slow grow, or it might be that it grows really quickly. Every business is different because every person is different.
Yeah, that's good advice. And just to finish off, Laurey, I'm thinking about trends for the future and things that are coming down the line in marketing. Can you see the way that the platforms are used, or the way that marketing is used, evolving in any particular way in the coming couple of years?
Gosh, well, I don't think any of us could have expected ChatGPT to happen even a year ago. So I've no idea in terms of trends. All I can say is what will probably never go out of fashion, and that is people-focused connection. Yeah. I think that is always going to be on trend. So I think in terms of trends that we haven't seen yet or don't know that are coming, it's embrace it, try it, explore it. But just choose what's authentically you. Don't choose it because everyone else is doing it. I think if you do that, then it's not going to work because you don't believe in it. If you believe in something, you have more control over it. You've got more passion for it, more excitement. And if you've got that, I don't think you can go wrong.
I mean, who remembers Clubhouse? What happened to Clubhouse?
Yeah, very good point. And Threads. Who even knows what Threads is on Instagram yet? I know that I'm not exploring it, but I can tell you that there are so many people selling courses on it. Yeah. So it's picking what's right for you. So yes, I do remember Clubhouse. I think I've still got an account, but I've never used it, funnily enough.
Well, look, Laurey, it's been a gallop through all the different aspects of marketing, and I appreciate the fact that you've given so much advice as well. So let me say 2 things. First of all, thank you for the chocolate.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Which is great. You'll always be welcome with that. And thank you for joining me on the Business Sense podcast.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it, and that has flown by.
Great. Thank you.